Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Schaberg here, Consolidated Planning Group. We are here partnering with Texoma, April Martin, Workforce Solutions. And so today we are going to be talking about Government Benefits 101 and addressing the ongoing care and planning concerns for your loved one with special needs. And so there is going to be a lot of information today. You do not have to take, excessive notes on every slide. We are going to give you a copy of today's slides and a copy of the recording. So you'll get an email later today or tomorrow with that information. So a couple of housekeeping items I always like to go over, first thing in the beginning. We are in webinar mode today. And so what that means to you is that we cannot see you or hear you, but we do know you're out there and we are glad you're here. So if this is your first time with us, welcome. We're glad you're here. And if you have attended any webinars with us in the past, we're certainly glad that you are back. So we want this to, we want to answer as many questions as we can as we go through this presentation today. So if you guys will put your questions in the chat box, April's going to be monitoring that box for me, and she's going to bring those questions up throughout the presentation. We're not going to, wait and save them till the end. If you've got a question, put it in there. Somebody else probably has the same similar question. So let us talk a little bit about who we are and kind of what we do. If you're new to us, Consolidated Planning Group, we are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We're in Sugar Land, Texas, and we actually serve families all across the U.S. And so I eat, sleep, and breathe special needs, both personally and professionally. I am a mom to four. I have two kids with special needs that have kind of transitioned into adulthood. So I have been in your shoes. I am in your shoes, but I also do this professionally. So when we say we're a holistic special needs financial planning firm, we have the same similar licenses that other financial advisors have, but we're also nationally certified as Social Security advisors and also members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. Our practice is nuanced and special needs, so we can equip the families that we serve with the knowledge and the resources and the know-how to have money in the right buckets to preserve eligibility for state and federally funded programs. We have over 29 years of experience in the financial service industry, and we are an advisory and consulting firm. And so we do serve families with special needs, agencies that serve them, professionals, and physicians who work in this community as well. And one last thing that I want to mention here about who we are and what we do, because a lot of times there is confusion. So we get calls all the time from families saying, hey, I need to set up guardianship, or I need a special needs trust, and things like that. And then attorneys, special needs planning attorneys, they get calls all the time saying, I need to fund the special needs trust. I need to know what to do or have money in the right buckets. So the truth is you need both. The attorneys don't do exactly what we do, and we don't do what the attorneys do. But if you're in need of an attorney, I want you to know that we do have relationships all across the state of Texas with attorneys that are nuanced in special needs, and we're happy to make a referral that might be a good fit for your family. And what we say here is that really your situation is specialized. When we have a loved one with special needs, our situation is specialized, and you need specialty services as opposed to general financial services or general legal services. So we just like to make that, kind of distinguish between the two, because there is a lot of confusion on that. So we are talking about Government Benefits 101, and if you think eye roll, or this is frustrating to me, or I hate this so much, I feel so confused by this, first I want to just say you're in the right place, and you're not alone, and you are not smart. This stuff is confusing. It is very confusing. So we're going to try to kind of dispel some of the myths today and kind of talk a little bit more about some of the programs that are out there. One reason that this is confusing is when we start talking about government benefits, the Social Security Administration has a lot of terms that sound similar they almost sound synonymous, but they're not. They're totally different programs. So we're going to talk about the two different programs so that way you can distinguish between the two programs and which one is which. And we're going to also talk about some of the other names that the Social Security Administration uses. And actually, they do have multiple names for the same program. So one person might call it one thing, and then you hear it another way. And so that's part of the confusion. So you are not alone in that. So the thing is when it comes to benefits for our kids, it is true that many families are not getting any benefits at all right now. Their child is under 18, and maybe their child doesn't qualify for SSI and Medicaid, although your child may clearly have disabilities. They don't qualify for SSI and Medicaid because when your child is under age 18, they do the income test and the asset test based off of mom and dad's income and assets, not the child's. So the first thing that I want to tell you, if you are taking notes, is although if you have a child that's under age 18 and they've never ever qualified for SSI or Medicaid, even though they are disabled, all of that changes when they turn 18. So a lot of families don't know that. They've applied before, they were denied, and they don't know that they should apply again when their child turns 18. So SSI and Medicaid, SSI stands for Supplemental Security Income. It is a means test, okay, a means-based test. So to qualify for SSI and Medicaid in this example, it is based off of your assets and being disabled. So an individual needs to be disabled and they need to have below the means test. So for a single person, so if your child is 18 or over, they cannot have more than $2,000 assets in their name outside of an ABLE account or a special needs trust, which we're going to talk more about that in a few minutes. For married couples, it's $3,000 in assets. If it's child and one parent, $4,000 in assets. Child and two parents, $5,000 in assets. So in all cases, you can have one house and one car, which is not a countable asset. So the reality of it is if you've never qualified for, before prior to age, your child turning 18, it's a good thing because this asset test is quite low. There is talk about them raising this amount. It has not been passed. There has been talk about it for years because it hasn't, even though, we're in a, crazy inflation period and things have happened over the years. These assets, this means-based test hasn't changed in years. The Social Security Administration has not announced their cost of living increase yet for SSI, and they haven't announced anything. We're expecting that over the next couple of weeks. So taking
Allison?
notes, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You do have one question for clarification. It says one child and one parent, $4,000. Is that before the child turns 18 or after? I think I missed it. They just wanted you to re-clarify that.
Sure. It is before the child turns 18. So if we're trying to see if the child is going to qualify for SSI and Medicaid, they're under age 18, they are going to count the parent's assets and income, not the child's. The magic thing that happens when your child turns 18 is, and even if you have guardianship of the child still lives under your roof, you provide their support. When the child turns 18, it's based off of their assets and income, not the parents. So that's where the switch changes. And that's where, I'm just bringing it to your attention. If you got denied before and you're angry, most people are angry when they get denied, right? They don't want to go back to the well because it was such a pain of a process to go through, right? But you do want to go back to the well once they turn 18. But we want to make sure that your child doesn't have more than $2,000 assets in their name. Okay, so let's just talk about that for a second. With the number of people that we have on here, we do have kids on here that do have more than $2,000 assets in their name. So what do we do with that money? Can we just take it out? Can we just move it? Can we just hide it? Can we just close the account? I get all those questions all the time, and those are all legitimate questions. But the answer is, if your child has more than $2,000 in their name, for one thing, you can't hide it. You can spend it down and provide proof of what it was spent on, right? Like if you spend it down, maybe then you buy a car, maybe it's adaptive equipment, maybe it's for therapy, maybe it's services, it doesn't matter. But if you spend it down, they may ask for receipts, so you're going to want to hold on to that. They also can move some of that money into a special needs trust or into an ABLE account. And again, we'll talk more about that later. April, do we have some additional questions?
We do. So we have one that says, I've been told my child cannot get SSI because I received child support over $800 and the child is over 18.
Okay, yes, this is true, and this is a very, very real problem, and that's there is a fix for it, so we're going to talk about that too. When it comes to child support in the state of Texas, a lot of times child support continues post age 18 for children that have disabilities, right? So once they turn 18, if that child support is still coming in, it's counted against them for income purposes and makes them disqualify for SSI. The way to fix this is partnering, with an attorney, hiring an attorney, and getting that child support court ordered to a first-party special needs trust for the benefit of said child. And once that child support is going to a first-party special needs trust, then they will go back and qualify for SSI. But that is a real issue. It happens all the time. And unfortunately, a lot of times people are surprised by this. It comes up out of nowhere. You had no idea. And this has to do, I just want to mention this, like for anybody that could find themselves going through a divorce, it is important. There are consultants that, there are attorneys that are nuanced in special needs divorce. And if your attorney is not nuanced in special needs divorce, there are consultants that can help because they know these things and they get that child support set up to the special needs trust on the front end, so you're not trying to pick up the pieces on the back end. But that is correct, and there is a fix. Okay?
You have one other question. The cutoff line is 4,000. I've been told it's 2,000, including both his benefit and my income.
So it just depends on if it's for the individual and if they're single, depending if he's over 18, and if they're under 18, then it has to do with the married couples, and these come right straight from the Social Security website. So it just depends on what your family status is and if the child is over 18 or under 18. So once a person, let's talk about what is SSI. So SSI right now, the amount is $841 per month. So, and if your child is getting SSI and they're getting about $561 a month, there needs to be a rent agreement submitted, so that way you can get the full amount. So the bottom line is when your child is living with you, if you don't have a rent agreement with them, then you're going to have a 1/3 reduction. So 841 divided by 3, it comes to the 561 is the total amount that she would get. So if you're getting 561, you can get that increased by having a rent agreement in place. And then on the first of every month, when your child gets paid, then you just move the rent agreement, the rent amount from the account where the SSI comes to your account. And then what you choose to do with it is up to you. If you want to turn right around and put it in their ABLE account, you can, but then your SSI will be increased. SSI comes along with Medicaid. So now I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to go over to Ssdi, Rsdi, and Medicare. So Ssdi is a Social Security disability. Rsdi is Retirement Survivors Disability Income. And this comes along with Medicare. So this is confusing because they call it so Social Security retirement is basically called Social Security. And then we have Ssdi, Social Security Disability, and sometimes they just call it Social Security Disability, and then Rsdi and Medicare. And the reason this is so confusing is because if your child is disabled, it only makes sense that they would qualify for Social Security Disability. But this is absolutely not how it works, and that's why it's confusing. So SSI is a means-based program. You have to be disabled and indigent. Ssdi is a worker-based program. So as we work, as parents, we're paying into that system. Those Social Security statements, the 40 quarters, we're paying into that. Some of our kids with disabilities will work, and some of our kids with disabilities will never work. And so a lot of times, basically what happens when you apply for SSI and Medicaid, you also apply for Ssdi and Medicare at the same time. But what happens, and I want you guys to know this because I get calls on this and people are very, very upset. Oftentimes what happens, and the letters look similar, like the heading from the Social Security Administration, it looks very similar, similar font, black and white, what have you. But usually when you apply, what happens is within a few weeks, you're going to get a denial right off the bat from Ssdi. It's from the Social Security Administration, not SSI, okay? And you get this denial, and what happens is parents lose their mind. They cannot even believe that their child would be denied. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this child's disabilities are clear for all the world to see, whatever, and now you're denying it. Like, I have had people cry. It's very, very upsetting. But actually, and they should tell you this when you apply, but what happens is the Ssdi denial letter comes first, and it's typically accurate because your child hasn't worked or paid into the system. If you're not getting Social Security disability and you yourself or a parent is not getting Social Security disability or retirement, then they in fact do not qualify for this yet because they didn't pay into the system. They do not have a work record. So that denial is accurate. But what that letter doesn't tell you of, oh, by the way, we're still processing your SSI and Medicaid application, and you'll be getting a letter in the coming weeks for that. So that's what they don't tell you. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. I think we have a few other questions. I'll go ahead and take those.
Okay. Do you create a bank account for them prior to them turning 18 and prior to applying for SSI?
So I think it makes the most sense. So either a joint account, like with a parent, you know, the Social Security Administration would say that you don't have to. I would say that as a parent, it's the smartest thing is to have a separate dedicated account for the SSI. So if you have guardianship of the child doesn't, you're not going to have a joint account. You could call it the SSI account or whatever, you know, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But I would just have a separate bank account. Every couple of years, they're going to ask you through your bank statements and, you know, proof that you're not over the asset limit and stuff like that. While it is okay to commingle those funds with your personal checking account, I wouldn't. It's just a lot cleaner to just have one account where the SSI funds go into and where you pay for expenses for that child out of that account. It's just a lot cleaner. So if your child is of sound mind and can be a co-signer on the account, we have a shared account, you can do that. If not, you can have a separate account. Okay?
Okay, the next question, attorney support is not always an option for many households. How would one refer consumers who need guidance to your organization, or would they be referred to somewhere else if not yours?
So that is true. I mean, that, you know, attorneys have fees, you know, associated with them, but there are organizations throughout the state of Texas, legal aid, you know, organizations and various legal organizations that provide services at either low cost or no cost, depending on your income. So, and we do have a list of resources that are available for families that, you know, may need to check on, you know, other options or other lower cost options. And there's two counties. I know Galveston County is one of them, and I can't confirm the other county, but there are two counties that do offer free guardianship in the state of Texas, and Galveston County is one of them. However, you have to live in Galveston County for that. But you can check with your county on that as well. Any additional questions?
There are. I agree that all the acronyms are confusing to parents, professionals, and also Social Security staff who use acronyms. So I think they're wondering, is there a place where they can maybe have the acronyms, maybe a glossary or a good website or something?
Yes, we've got it in this presentation, so perfect. Yes.
Okay, then that's it.
Okay, all set. So when should you apply, and what do you need to apply for? So apply, you know, if you hit the means-based test, It is pointless to apply for SSI and Medicaid if the child is under age 18 if you don't hit those financial requirements. You will automatically be denied if you don't hit the financial requirements. So save yourself the time and energy and don't even bother to apply. It will definitely be denied in that regard. So you can apply for SSI the month that your child's 18th birthday. I suggest that at least the day after their actual birthday. So if their birthday is October 4th, I would apply for October 5th or after, because I have seen some confusion. They do say it's the birthday month, but I actually have seen some families apply the birthday month and then they take into consideration the parent's income, which they're not supposed to, which in turn means that you have to reapply and it's a debacle. So anyway, I suggest one day after the birthday when they actually turn 18 to avoid that confusion. So the Social Security offices were closed for a very long time due to COVID. They opened back up in April and they are meeting face-to-face. I strongly suggest that you have an appointment before you go to your local Social Security office. The wait times can be hours and hours. So have an appointment when you go in, and I would still block off a good chunk of your day to be there because there's no telling how long you're going to be there, even with an appointment. Okay, but the cool thing is in April of this year they launched an electronic filing tool. And the cool thing about that is right from your internet browser, you can apply, basically you're putting your interest out there that you want to apply for SSI for said child. And it takes like 5 minutes. And then someone from the Social Security office will call you within a couple of weeks and schedule your appointment to finish your application and get all of your information. But the cool thing about this electronic filing tool, and again, this was just launched in 2022, is that it locks the date in. So if you go out there today, October 4th, and they don't call you for 3 weeks, and they call you in 3 weeks, and they schedule your meeting for 2 more weeks, you locked your date in of October 4th. So when they do approve it, they're going to go back and pay to October 4th. Okay, so that's something to know. Sometimes they will also do phone appointments as well. And sometimes when you call to get an appointment, they'll say, we don't have any appointments available. We'll call you in a couple of weeks to schedule. And they typically do actually call you. But I am a fan of the electronic filing tool because it locks in that date. You're going to want to have evidence that demonstrates that the child's disability began before age 22 to qualify for childhood disability benefits. It's called CDB now, but for 40 years they called it DAC, Disabled Adult Child. So there's another one of those acronyms that they throw around. And depending on which Social Security Administration person that you talk to and how long they've been there will depend on, they may still refer to it as DAC because that's what they're used to all these years. And then the newer ones will refer to it as childhood disability benefits, but it's the same program. So, okay. The other thing is that, sure.
I'm so sorry. We have a couple of questions.
No, go ahead.
For when the time comes, if my child turns 18, if I do not want to attain guardianship, do you know if the Social Security Administration will still allow me to help him and speak for him if I have supported decision-making, or would a partial guardianship be best?
So you can apply to be a representative payee. There are plenty of people that have kids that they're not going to do guardianship. Maybe they do power of attorney, supported decision-making agreement, etc. The Social Security Administration does not recognize anything except for guardianship. Okay, they don't recognize the power of attorney or any of those things. But you can apply to be the representative payee for the child. There is forms out there. If your child is of sound mind, where they can give you authorization. I think I'd have to go back and look, but I think it's the SSA 1696 form that you can fill out where the child gives you authorization to call on their behalf. If you have a child with communication difficulties, I strongly suggest that you apply to be the representative payee and have those forms on file to be able to talk on their behalf. Because if you don't on that application, they're going to want to talk to your child, and your child's going to be giving you blank stares. They're not going to know how to answer. And then when you try to answer, they're going to tell you they can't take your answer. It's very frustrating. But so you do want to look about being the representative payee and look at the authorized contact on the person's record.
Okay, next question that we have is, what is the site for the filing tool? You can
find it. We do have a link for it, but you can find it on the ssa.gov and applying for SSI. Also on the Social Security Administration, you can create an account for the person. So you can have a username and password, and it's their account, and you can apply through that. You can upload documents and other things like that as well.
Okay, and the next question that we have is, if the child has a disability, is 18 and indigent, are the reasons that SSI could still be denied?
We're going to talk about the Blue Book and conditions for disability in just a moment, so I'm going to come back to that. There are plenty of reasons that people are denied that they do have a disability, but are they disabled enough, kind of is the answer. And so we're going to talk about how you can look that up. So as you're getting ready for your SSI application, I recommend just creating a folder on your desktop and dragging the important information into that folder, so that way you have it handy. I suggest getting a list of the physician's name, address, and phone numbers. All physicians, neurologists, psychologists, psychiatrists, PCP, they're going to get the PCP records, but any other specialist records that you might have as well. So name, address, and phone numbers of physicians, diagnosis history and about the date that they were diagnosed, medications and what they're for. They don't care about the milligrams. They just want to know what they're for. Any employer information, if any, name, address, and phone number of employer. What is their hourly rate of pay? How many hours a week do they get, if anything like that? You're going to want to have at least the last 3 months of the bank statements. They're going to ask about the bank and any monies that they have. You're going to want to consider chatting with the PCP first and reviewing the records, letting them know that you're going to be applying for SSI, and you want to take a look and see what's in the records to see if the records reflect correctly the diagnosis. Some kids don't see the PCP for all of their issues, right? They might see the neurologist or cardiologist or any number of other physicians. So you might want to do that as well.
Okay, and then we had a repeat question about the website to apply electronically, and I think that that's going to be at the end, that you'll have it in the slides. And then another question about the child turning 18 and the parents' assets being counted in, and I think you said that they are not counted in, that it's based solely on the child. Correct?
Absolutely should not be counted, and if they were counted, it is wrong, and you need to go back and you need to talk to a supervisor. That is wrong. Okay, so and if they told you something crazy, well, you have guardianship, so we count your assets. That is not true. I've heard all kinds of stuff, all kinds of, mixed up. But the thing is there's so many rules. It's not that the people at the Social Security Administration are not hardworking or they don't know their job. They do have a turnover. There is an element to that, and everybody is experiencing that right now. And there's a lot to learn. And there's a lot of information. And some people are trained in SSI, and some people are trained in Ssdi. So if your information sounds fishy, ask for a supervisor, but that is wrong if they're counting your assets if the child's over 18, for sure. Okay, so somebody asked about, is there any way that somebody could be denied if they are disabled and indigent? And the answer is yes, you can still be denied. So what this is, and this is a link, it's a clickable link here, and this is the Social Security Blue Book. And what this is basically a medical impairment guide that the Social Security Administration uses to determine disability, and it lists conditions. So this is where you're going to think about, what are the diagnoses that your child has? List them all, okay? Look them up in this book, and it is going to tell you what evidence that you need to prove, basically, or that your doctor's records need to prove that the child is disabled, okay? So, it'll talk about all kinds of different mental illnesses and things like that. It's going any neurological disorders, you name it, it is in there. But so you're going to want to look all of those up. And so when you're reviewing the PCP records, which we suggested, you don't have to do that. But I think that the application goes smoother. If you know about what kind of records they're going to get, the application goes smoother. So if you know what they're looking for, the Social Security Blue Book is going to tell you what they're looking for. And then when you review the records to see, do those records spell that out? Is it clear? And even sharing what it has to be, what has to be proven with your physician it's okay to do that as well.
Okay, we had a question about somebody who became disabled when they were 35. How can a person who had a stroke and is now unable to work anymore, how do they apply for SSI?
So if the person had a stroke at 35 and they had a work record, well, first of all, there's one thing that I want to just take a pause and I want to go back a moment, because Ssdi, Rsdi, and Medicare, okay, not SSI. We said that our kids, oftentimes won't qualify for that because they haven't worked or they haven't paid in. But what happens with the Social Security Administration, there is this disabled adult child or childhood disability benefits that we were talking about briefly earlier. And basically what that says is if the child's disability started prior to age 22, so the magic age is the disability started prior to age 22. It doesn't matter when you apply if you missed the boat, okay? But the disability had to start prior to age 22, we're going to cover that child under a parent's record for Social Security disability when that parent either retires or goes on disability. So basically what happens is prior to the parent going on Ssdi or retiring, the child qualifies for SSI and Medicaid. But this program says that the child can have 50% of the parent's record. So for example, let's say, April, that you are retiring and your Social Security benefits are $4,000 a month. April has a child who has a disability, an adult child who has a disability that started prior to age 22. In this example, what will happen is that April's child is going to switch over from SSI and Medicaid over to Rsdi under a parent's record under the childhood disability benefits, and that child now will be eligible for $2,000 a month, 50% of her record. And after 2 years, will be eligible for Medicare. So they'll be eligible for Medicaid because they'll keep Medicaid under the Pickle Amendment, so they won't lose Medicaid. And then after 2 years, they'll be dual eligible for Medicare. There are family maximums that take place here. So this is prior to age 22, but going back to the question at hand, for a person whose disability basically started after age 22, and if they had a stroke, what do we do? So this is where it could be SSI and Medicaid. It could be Ssdi under their own record. So if they have paid into the system, you can look up how many work credits a 35-year-old should have to see if they're fully insured for Ssdi, okay? So they may qualify for Ssdi under their own record, and then after 2 years would be eligible for Medicare. And if they don't qualify for Ssdi and Medicare, they may qualify for SSI and Medicaid. And not to confuse things, but sometimes they qualify for a combination of both. So if the Ssdi amount is not basically more than the SSI amount, then they could basically have a little combination of both. So they're going to keep you whole. You're not going to make extra money. You're not going to get the SSI plus the total, Ssdi, but they are going to make you whole. So I know that was kind of a long story, but what I want to talk about right now is I want to talk about presumptive disability conditions. And so the other word for this is compassionate allowances. This year, the Social Security Administration updated a list, and they've added a whole bunch more. I think they added like 200 more presumptive conditions. So there are some conditions that you can have that are just automatically deemed as disabled. We've got total deafness, no sound or perception in either ear, total blindness, amputation of a leg, bed confinement, stroke more than 3 months in the past, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, or atrophy. We have Down syndrome and intellectual disability with an IQ below 70. So those are just some of them, but you can look up the Social Security Administration compassionate allowances to see if your child has a condition that would be considered a compassionate allowance. And basically what this means is that, typically you can expect that your Social Security, your SSI application could take 3 to 6 months. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. But if your child qualifies for a presumptive condition or a compassionate allowance, the determination is made by the local office, and they will basically start paying you prior to DDS, which is the Disability Determination Office, makes a decision. So basically, they will presumptively start paying you with the understanding that the individual does in fact have a disability. So if you fall into that category, then the presumptive payments should start sooner. The 3 to 6 month timeline, once you take your application and they get your information, then what happens is your application goes to the Disability Determination Offices in Austin. It's called DDS. And so that's where they're getting all of the medical records from the doctors. There's sometimes that it's sitting out there spinning. You can call the DDS office, you can Google that and get their phone number, provide the kid's Social Security number, and ask where they stand. Have they reviewed? Are they awaiting on records? Have they made a determination? What is the status? Because sometimes your application is out there spinning because your doctor simply did not send the medical records. So that could be a reason. So having those conversations with the doctors and asking them to promptly send the information needed is important. So I think we have some questions, April.
We do. If child support of $750 is paid through OAG to custodial parent, is that income counted against the disabled child SSI eligibility?
Absolutely. And that is where you have to work with an attorney to get that child support redirected, court ordered to a first party special needs trust for sure. If it goes through the system, like you mentioned, it will be counted against the child from an income perspective.
Okay. And then we have one more comment and a question. The comment is just that they thought that maybe extended COVID had been added to the list that you just went through for the additional items. And then if a parent is eligible for a pension or 403B from their workplace, does that affect the child's Ssdi in the future for the patients?
That I would have to look up. I actually just looked that up because we had a disabled individual who actually did work and had their own 401k. So the question was, were the assets in the 401k going to be used against him for a means-based test? And for the individual, the answer is no, unless they were taking income from the 401k. So if they're getting like monthly amounts from the 401k, but I didn't look it up from a parent's perspective. I'm not sure on that. We can take that offline. You can email me and we'll find the answer to that. But we actually just looked that up last week for an individual with a disability who is no longer working or able to work, but actually did work and have a 401k in the past.
Okay, and then we have a couple more related questions dealing with child support. What if child support is ordered, but they're in arrears nearly $30,000 and no payment is coming in? And then
so the answer to that one is it's still counted against you, and I know it's horrible. And I've had other situations where grandparents were having custody, basically were guardian of the special needs child, and the mother was getting child support and taking the money. It's still counted against the child. It's got to go to it's either got to be canceled or thrown out, or it needs to be redirected to a first party special needs trust, because they're still going to count it against you even though you're not getting it.
Okay, and I think that's about it right now. They were
okay. So we'll keep it moving so we can get through the slides, and then we'll take any questions at the end for this. If there's anything, real, you just use your judgment, April, on that. So benefits when a parent retires, becomes disabled, or passes away. We just talked about this a minute ago. It was called Disabled Adult Child, or DAC, for 40 years. And this is where if your child's disability started prior to age 22, that when you retire or go on disability, they'll be entitled to 50% of your record. It doesn't reduce what you get unless you hit the family maximums. There is a such thing as a family maximum. But this is now called Childhood Disability Benefits, or CDB. So after 24 months of receiving Title II benefits, the DAC or CDB will be eligible for Medicare. So when a parent passes away, the disabled adult child is entitled to 75% of the deceased parent's records, Social Security. So at the point that the parent passes away, the child, as long as the child is still disabled, then their benefit will be increased to 75%, up from the 50% to the 75%. Okay, so here's the legend I think somebody asked for. So the Title II program, we got SSA, Social Security Retirement Benefits. Rsdi is the Retirement Survivor Disability Insurance. Ssdi, Social Security Disability Insurance. CDB, Childhood Disability Benefits, which is formerly called DAC, Disabled Adult Child. And some of the, like I said, long-term workers, and we have people, our representative in our area that we worked with a lot, he was the community affairs specialist for the Social Security Administration. He just retired this year, and he'd been there 40 years. There's a lot of people that's been there a long, long time. So you might hear them still use the word DAC. DWB is Disabled Widower Benefits. And an adult receiving Title II benefits is a beneficiary. So again, you guys are going to get a copy of these slides and the recording, so you'll have this kind of legend as well. How are we on questions?
So far, I don't think that we, let's see. Yep, they were good. I just put in contact information for us. The other one we have is when a child receives additional amounts due to a parent retiring, does that amount have to be spent down or put into the ABLE account?
When a child, I'm not sure, I think I need clarification on that. We never want to go over $2,000. So whatever amount of money, if they're getting SSI or if they're working and having earnings from working, if there is a pension that, like, maybe the father passed away and the kid is the kid is getting pension payments, which we don't want that to happen. We would want it to go to a special needs trust. It just depends on how that would be. It would be counted. I mean, it would be counted as income for SSI purposes. Might be okay for Ssdi purposes, as long as you hit the Medicaid minimum. So you always want to stay Medicaid eligible in the state of Texas. All of the waivers are Medicaid eligible waivers. They're Medicaid waivers in the state of Texas. So sometimes people, when they switch over from SSI to Rsdi or, Social Security Disability, and then after 2 years they have Medicare, sometimes people don't want to mess with Medicaid anymore, and they don't want to have to worry about keeping that $2,000 minimum for their account, which is required for Medicaid as well. And if that's the case, then it really doesn't matter as much, but it just kind of depends on your situation. And we're happy to do one-offs, because I know that there's like one-off situations for everybody, and there's probably people on here that have a deceased spouse or things like that, there's a lot of moving parts. So let's talk about Ssdi, Social Security Disability Insurance. So file an application, found to be medically disabled. Remember, this is a worker-based program. They pay into the system, be fully insured, or is insured for disability status under a parent's record. And then when they is not working, or is working and the countable income is less than the substantial gainful activity for 2022, which is $1,350 gross per month. This amount is going to change. for 2023. So when you apply for SSI and Medicaid, Ssdi, if a person is working and they're earning more than $1,350 gross per month, they are basically not considered disabled. If they have earned more than $1,350 gross per month, they're not going to be able to be considered for childhood disability benefits under a parent's record. So I understand from, Workforce Solutions, Workforce Commission, vocational rehab, there's all kinds of programs in this state to help our disabled kids get to work, to help close the gaps on the impediments to employment that our children have. And I know as parents, a lot of, our hope is that they will be able to work and have a fulfilling life, or even just be able to work and to feel important about whatever work it is that they're doing. And then there's this push-pull of, well, I don't want my child to work because I want him to get $841 a month on the SSI or in Medicaid. I need them to get the Medicaid. So, Medicaid is one issue, but what I will tell you is through the Workforce Commission and the vocational rehab program, they do have subject matter experts on working and getting SSI and Medicaid, working with Ssdi. They do partner with various organizations. WIPA is one of them that talks about, working and getting benefits. And so I think that the careful thing to do is, obviously, if your child can earn more than the substantial gainful amount, then good for them. And they're going to build their own work credits and their own work record up, and that's a good thing. But if your child will likely never, ever be able to earn more than the substantial gainful amount, I would be cautious as a parent to allow them to work over that substantial gainful amount to lose the status of a disabled adult child under a parent's record. Because if they're never going to build up their record very much, their Social Security disability would be much less than 50% of your record in most cases.
We do have a new question on here. Is SSI taxed?
Generally, no. Social Security depends on the amount of, Social Security disability and Social Security retirement depends on the amount of income that you've got coming into the household. Depends on on whether it's taxed, but generally not on the SSI. Okay,
and then we have a clarification question. I want to ensure that I understand. At 18, the child can get SSI about $841 a month. When I retire, that amount will increase to 50% of my SSI PIA.
That's correct. You should work for us. That's exactly right. So that, and it could be one or the other, like parent. So if mom retires first, it could be 50% of yours. If then dad later retires and his amount is higher, you can switch the child to dad's record. It's not both, but it can be one or the other. I just want to mention here too, that in the example that we have anybody on here that has, they have guardianship of a grandkid or something like that, there has to be, we've seen this a lot where grandparents are taking care of grandkids. In order for that child to be covered under under the grandparent's record, the child's parents have to either be both disabled or deceased, or the grandparents have to adopt that child. So we have had that come up before. Guardianship isn't enough for a grandchild to be covered under a parent's record. And then furthermore, there is a such thing as a disabled adult child being covered under a step-parent's record. So in the example, the kid lives with mom and stepdad. Stepdad's record is higher. The kid can be covered under the stepdad's record as well, or stepmom, okay. Whatever. Okay.
I have another question. What happens when a parent dies who was receiving SSI for disability or disability payments, and then the spouse dies? What happens to those benefits?
So they would be 75%. So if a person was already getting benefits, then the kid should have been getting 50% of the parent's record. And if the parent passes away, then those benefits move up to 75% of the parent's record. Even if, the spouse passes away or what have. The kid doesn't lose the benefits because the parents pass away is basically the answer.
Okay. And then can a disabled adult with a pension who works minimally get Ssdi?
It depends if he's taking pension income and how much the income is, and it depends on, again, how much he is working and what the disabling conditions are. So that is a very, very broad question. But what I would do, and we're going to talk about this in just a second, is I would review the Social Security Red Book. So we'll have a link for that. So to be entitled to Rsdi, the Retirement, Survivor, and Disability Insurance, Rsdi, the child is 18 years or older, or they're a minor. So like a minor child and they're not disabled, if a parent dies, goes on disability, or retires, a minor child would get benefits under Rsdi, okay, without having a disability. If they have a disability, 18 years or older, the disability had to begin prior to age 22, is the dependent of the insured worker, and is not married, and has not previously performed substantial gainful activity. Right now, again, $1,350 gross per month for 2022 is the deal. And it is important to know, I want to just mention this because we've been talking about the childhood disability benefits, disabled adult child, formerly called. If your child, there's plenty of families that have kids with disabilities that don't have intellectual disabilities. Maybe they have a mobility disability, but they could get married, okay? So the bottom line that you need to know is that if you have a child covered under your record and they get married, they will no longer qualify for childhood disability benefits under a parent record. And if they get divorced later, they can't rekindle this relationship. If they get married, they lose the ability to be a disabled adult child under a parent's record. So it is important to note that there are some caveats. If they marry a person that also qualifies for disability, there's some other kind of ifs and buts, but I haven't seen very many people hit those ifs and buts. So we talked about the Social Security Red Book. This is a general reference source about the employment-related provisions for the Social Security Disability Insurance and Ssi. And this is a good resource book. It might be a tough read, but it is a good resource book talking about their programs. The Social Security Administration is not here to squash benefits immediately if your child wants to try their hand at working, okay? There's different programs, Ticket to Work, and again, Workforce Solutions, Workforce Commission, the vocational rehab programs. They're going to talk to you about these types of things. They do have subject matter experts that can talk to you further about it. But this Red Book, you can download this right online and look for yourself on how working affects benefits. And what you need to know, the key thing that you want to take away from this slide right here is that working and Ssi and working and Ssdi have two separate sets of rules. So if your child is dual eligible for Ssi and Ssdi, then you got to follow all the rules. If they're only eligible for Ssdi, then you follow the Ssdi rules. And if they're only eligible for Ssi, you follow the Ssi rules. But the main thing you need to know is WIPA is an organization contracted by the Social Security Administration and all these other organizations out there that will help you navigate this. You don't have to figure it all out yourself. I do suggest you look at the Red Book, but there are people to help you with your confusing situation. I call them the stump the chump situations. There's always these like little, the ifs and buts, and will this happen, and he works this much, and just little silly things that make it complicated and not clear, but WIPA can definitely help you with that. So let's talk about making sure that you protect your child's government benefits. We've talked about it a little bit. You want to make sure that you have your assets, your child's assets in the appropriate buckets. You want to ensure that your special needs family member's name is not set up as a beneficiary on any life insurance, investment, or bank accounts. You're also going to want to make sure that well-meaning family members do not leave assets directly to the named individual as opposed to a third-party special needs trust for the benefit of the said, special needs family member. When we leave money directly to these kids as a beneficiary on any life insurance or investment accounts, it is going to count against them for the asset-based test for both Ssi and Medicaid. So what happens? What if grandma and grandpa left your kid money and you didn't know it? You hire an attorney and they get a court order to move the money into a first-party special needs trust. If you set it up the right way, you've got it set up to go to a third-party special needs trust for little Johnny. There's no Medicaid payback on a third-party special needs trust. If we leave money accidentally to Johnny and then we got to fix it on the back end where you have to get an attorney involved, there is going to have to be a court order, and it is Johnny's money, and it's going to have to go to first-party special needs trust, and there will be a Medicaid payback on that. Guys, we have I know this is a lot of information, but the good news is we do have a YouTube channel, Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel, and we have webinars on every single one of these topics: guardianship, special needs trust, first party, third party. We've got a lot more webinars on SSI, Ssdi. We have a webinar on working and getting, benefits. So we have all of that out there. So do find our YouTube channel. It's in the chat box. You can subscribe for free. There's no cost for that. So if you have questions, which I'm sure you do, on kind of the more of the details on some of these trusts and things like that, go check that out. So let's talk about money being in the right buckets. So establish a special needs trust for their future care. This is it could be called a supplemental needs trust for little Johnny. It could be called a special needs trust. And again, there's first party and third party. Life insurance and assets provide funding for the special needs trust. So special needs trust is set up by an attorney, but it's not hooked to any money, right? So we got to fund. How are we going to fund the trust? How are we going to make sure that our kids have enough funding for their future care when we're no longer here? And then, of course, there is an ABLE account. We're going to talk a little bit more about that ABLE account. So what you need to know about the ABLE account is the beneficiary is the account owner. This is organized under the tax code 529A for ABLE. Income earned in the account is not taxable, but contributions are not deductible. But the cool thing is that in the ABLE account, it doesn't jeopardize SSI and Medicaid or other public benefits. But there are special contributions and distribution limits. So here's where they are. So who can have an ABLE account? So if you don't already have one set up, it's okay. As long as the individual's disability started prior to age 26, they can have an ABLE account. The contributions could be made by anyone, limited to the gift tax exclusion, currently $16,000 in total annually for 2022. Those have not been announced yet for 2023, so we'll get those numbers shortly. You don't ever want to have more than $100,000 in this ABLE account, or you will disqualify for SSI. Them money will be accounted against them for SSI and Medicaid purposes. If the account owner, your loved one with a disability, is also working, they can contribute up to an additional $12,880 a year into their ABLE account. So we've got kids' accounts are nearing $2,000 because they're working. We can contribute to that ABLE account and get those funds out of their regular account into the ABLE account, so will not be counted against them. This is tax-free growth of investments. But what you need to know on the ABLE account, just like a first-party special needs trust, there could be a Medicaid payback at death. Okay, so this is just a quick list. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we're going to send you the slides of items that you can pay for out of an ABLE account. What you need to know, what you can pay for out of an ABLE account is if it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, you can basically pay for it out of an ABLE account. These are items that a special needs trust can pay for. So the two things that you need to know are the differences between the special needs trust and the ABLE account and why you might need both. As an ABLE account can pay for food and shelter without a 1/3 reduction to SSI. A special needs trust can pay for food and shelter, but there would be a 1/3 reduction to SSI. So instead of the $841 a month, you would get $561. You can pay for food and shelter out of the account where the SSI goes to. You can pay for food and shelter out of an ABLE account. So this is just a quick list of what you can pay for out of a special needs trust. And the main thing you need to know about the special needs trust is that it is unlimited, the amount of money that you can have in a special needs trust. You can literally have millions of dollars in a special needs trust, whereas the ABLE account, you can only have $100,000 before they are going to disqualify. So that's another difference. So thinking about who's going to care for your child when you're gone, we can help you develop a future care plan that'll answer some of these questions. we're able to provide future care cost analysis for families that are saying, hey, listen, I know Johnny's going to need care in the future when I'm gone, but I don't know how much that is, and I need help determining that. We're able to do that. Consider touring care facilities for partial and full residential care, and I'm not saying that that's the right fit for your family. You know what the right fit for your family is, but don't wait until you're 85 years old and you're not physically able to care for your child anymore. Have a backup plan. What if you get sick? What if you're no longer here? What if the siblings can't do that? And we say make careful considerations before naming a sibling. They have hopes and dreams. They're going to have kids. They're going to have a busy life just like you do. And we like siblings to have a loving, friendly relationship, not an obligatory one. And so we like to have, plans that include siblings as a friend and a loved one. And, maybe they're a trustee of the trust or things like that, but maybe not in the role of full-time caregiver. These are things that should be on your special needs planning radar. We have webinars on every single one of these topics. And so if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll find them out there. There's over 200 webinars out there, so you can kind of pick and choose the ones that make the most sense for you. We will send out an email once a month with all of our webinars for the month, and you can register for future webinars on these topics as well. This is our team. And again, we are nationally certified as Social Security advisors and members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. We can definitely help you in your planning and on the journey that you're on. And probably a webinar like this brings a lot more questions. We're happy to answer your questions. We have a free personalized consultation where you can meet with us and talk to us more about your specific questions and kind of get answers. We can help you on this journey. You do not have to go it alone. If you've been feeling overwhelmed, feel empowered. We're going to give you the tools and resources that you need to be successful on this journey. So I know that I think I'm right at time. Do we have just a few more questions that you want to pitch to me before we end?
I did have one here. My daughter is 21. We don't plan on opening an ABLE account right now. Can we open up one at any age, or do we need to open it now?
Good question. And the answer is you can open it at any time as long as the disability started prior to age 26. Another thing I wanted to mention to you for the disabled adult child benefits, sometimes people didn't know about that. Can you apply for that later? My kid's 26. Can I apply for it? Did the child's disability start prior to age 22? If the answer is yes, then yes, you can. You're not late. And that was one more thing I just wanted to answer too on guardianship. You can start the guardianship process 6 months prior to the child turning 18, but you don't have to. We've got families that are applying for guardianship right now and their kids are in their 50s, okay? So if you didn't apply for guardianship, you need guardianship, or at least those conversations about what are the next steps for that. You're not too late to the party for that either.
Okay, and then just one more. Does the amount received monthly for SSI under the parent count towards the substantial gainful activity level of $1,350 per month?
The substantial gainful amount is based off of earned income, not unearned income. So there's a such thing as earned income and unearned income. So anything that they're receiving under the parent's record, which would be Ssdi, not SSI, would be unearned income. Okay, so no.
Okay. I know that there were a few other questions that we may have not gotten to in there, but many of them were similar to questions that have been asked previously.
Well, and I would just like to say, email us, reach out, schedule your free consultation. We'll be happy to answer those questions. With as many people as on and registered today, we can't always get to all of them, but we will certainly be happy to have a free personalized consultation with you and talk through a few more of those questions. April, as always, it was a pleasure, and we look forward to partnering with you again. I believe it's November 1st.
Yep, November 1st.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Bye now.
Bye-bye.